trip to Stockholm, I headed through the Swedish countryside on the train on the way to its neighbour, Denmark, another Scandinavian country. Outside of its far north, Sweden is a lot flatter than I thought, a land of multiple lakes and low rolling fields. At the southern tip of Sweden is its third largest city, Malmö, and leading from Malmö to Copenhagen is the famous bridge, as popularised in the TV series. This road and rail bridge runs across the sea between the two countries, and here I am on the train going under it. A bit like London, like with these.
This isn't very I wouldn't have filmed this bit, it's not very inspiring. I'd wait till we get into town. You don't want to film the...
Here we are in Denmark, in Copenhagen Central Station, and I've got to say, this place is eye-wateringly expensive. The station was built in the early 20th century, but a lot of the other buildings in the town are much more modern. But to admit, even though I'm in my 30s, I couldn't resist popping into the Lego shop. This is Denmark, after all, the home of Lego. Now heading into the main square, where the impressive town hall just seems second stands. On our way to the Nye Carlsberg Glyptotek, apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, which is a famous collection of sculptures which was gathered in the 19th century by a rich individual. That individual was Carl Jacobsen, the founder of the world-famous beer Carlsberg, and you can imagine if Carlsberg did museums, this is what it would look like. So you've got this late 19th century central atrium, and off there are about 3 wings, one with the ancient sculpture, one with the more modern sculptures of the 19th century, and a third with an extensive French art collection. It's now time to take a look at the ancient sculptures. The Greek statues were extinct.
No, that they were ever painted. Somebody said...
The collection covers all periods of ancient art, starting here from archaic Greece, running right through to Rome, and even further back to ancient Egypt. Here we have some reliefs, I believe from Athenian tombs, which were ultimately outlawed because they were deemed a waste of money by the city. Here we have a rare surviving Roman bronze, and on the walls here there's the first indications of a relatively colourful colour scheme which will be running throughout the museum. I've got to admit, I think the Scandi museums do a really good job of presentation. I'm a big fan of the whole setup and the aesthetics of this place. Just after this statue of Demosthenes, you'll see one more example of what I mean, which is a wonderful triomphe d'oeil in the reef, which looks a lot higher than it actually is. The heart of the collection is this, the central hall, which is filled with some of the finest statues throughout the museum, and reminds me a little bit of the old museum Rotunda in Berlin. The statues are mostly of Roman emperors like Augustus, or gods such as Apollo. As mentioned earlier, the classical collection is complemented by an extensive 19th century collection. A lot of these works are much more refined than the classical models, showing elaborate use of contrapposto. This one of a man fighting off a dog was not appreciated by my girlfriend. I think my favourite piece in the whole collection is this sculpture of Death and the Maiden. I love the contrast between the harsh angularity of Death and the soft curves of the woman, which I think really captures something about the fragility of life. A lot of the 19th century works are haunted by death in a way the classical ones are not. As an example of this one of a memorial for someone's wife, and this taken from the Divine Comedy of Ugolino eating his children. Finally, there are a few exceedingly beautiful small-scale ivory statues in the collection. While these will no longer be possible to make because elephants are endangered, they look incredible, and the detail that you can get with such a soft material is really beautiful. Now it's time to move on away from the horrors of the sculpture gallery into the French painting gallery. Here we have a series of works from the French artist Paul Gauguin, who spent some of his early life in France before moving to Tahiti, where he painted his more familiar work. Alongside the Gauguins are a few Cézannes and even some Van Goghs. Of all the 19th century French painters here, it's Degas who really steals the show, thanks to one work that's on display on the ground floor, where we're about to head now. It's this work, Dancers Practicing, which Degas worked on over decades, changing bits here and there. The exhibition shows, through modern analysis, peeling through layers of paint, how the painting evolved until it got to the final painting, which you can see before you today. The museum also has a section devoted to slightly less well-known civilizations. Here we have part of the Ishtar Gate from Babylon. Here we have an Etruscan tomb with a rather exotic-looking cave painting. And here, some Cypriot wares. We've now seen all the main civilizations in the museum, except for one, the oldest, ancient Egypt. The Egyptian collection here is quite varied, and I really enjoyed it. This room in particular, you can see how statues of the pharaohs go from the original ancient Egyptian period all the way through to the Ptolemaic period when the Greeks ruled Egypt, and you can see the impact that this had on the statuary and how the shapes shifted from these very austere forms to more free Greek-inspired ones. There's also a few statues of the Egyptian gods here. You've got the dwarf god Bes and the baboon god Babi. They're very different to the Greek statuesque human figures. This one in particular looks like he could do with going to the gym. So now I've spent almost 10 minutes talking about this one place in Copenhagen, Glyptotek, but it really is one of the best things to see in the city. And the Greco-Roman sculpture collection here, I would say, is second to none from what I've seen, and I've seen a lot in my time. I really encourage you to try to visit if you get the chance. and make the most of your time here. Well, with all that walking around the museum, I think I've definitely done enough to earn a well-deserved cookie. This is one of the biggest cookies I think I've ever had. It's bigger than my hand.
It's quite a fancy guy.
Oh, yeah, they have this handful.
Well, it's time to leave Glyptotek behind. Again, I can't stress just how great the building is, including the gardens. If Carlsberg did museum, this is what it would be like. We're off now to our next site, which is one of the most famous castles in the whole country.
Yeah, like the buildings are a little bit fancier than, like say Stockholm or some of the buildings in south of France. But you want to go now?
This is Rosenborg Castle, one of the prettiest that I've ever laid eyes on, dating from the 17th century, which would have been the Elizabethan times in England. Its geometric gardens are filled with flowers, which is the height of summer. One of the things I really like about the castle is that it's just covered in decoration. The ceilings, the walls, the floors, all of it looks beautiful. And it's on a much more human scale than some of the large German or Austrian palaces. If you're wondering how the kings of Denmark being such a small country, acquired so much wealth, the answer is that Denmark used to be quite a bit bigger. It owned Norway for over 400 years, from about 1400 to the time of Napoleon, as well as having some territories in Sweden and various other areas. And this palace was constructed pretty much at the height of its powers. The castle is very tall in structure, and you have to go up quite a lot of stairs as you progress through the various rooms, but the rooms are themselves relatively narrow. We're just coming up to one of my favourite rooms in the whole palace, which is the mirror room. Now, Louis XIV might have had his hall of mirrors at Versailles, but the kings of Denmark, not being as rich, did things on a slightly smaller scale, although I do like the addition of mirrors even on the ceiling. This is probably the biggest single room in the palace on the fourth floor, which was the throne room, where you would be granted an audience with His Majesty.
Really big and chunky rooms and kind of overwhelming, whereas that felt more like intimate and hugely.
Hugely.
You want to say hi to the camera?
on our way now down to the waterfront. Now, Copenhagen itself is on a large island located between the largest part of Denmark and Sweden, and you're about to see some of the more traditional houses.
Yeah.
Well, this area is known as Nyhavn, or New Harbour, and it was built around the 17th century, so similar time to the castle. These multicoloured houses are what I thought of when I first came to Copenhagen, and I thought the majority of the city would be like this, but in reality a lot of it is much
the shops
grander
are so
and is almost
cute.
similar to a big European city, say like Munich.
Yeah, this is it. This is Copenhagen.
This is Copenhagen.
Nyhavn was home to Denmark's most famous son, Hans Christian Andersen, the author of the fairy tales, and we're going to head out to the edge of the city to an old fort and see what's a very nice memorial for him. The fort itself is known as the Castellet, or the Citadel, and it's still used by the Danish military today. It's a very unusual shape, a sort of star fort shape, one of the best preserved in Europe, which would have allowed the guns to have a wider range of exposure against any defenders coming towards it, although I'm not sure how much use it would be in a modern battle. Well, I promised you a memorial to Hans Christian Andersen, and you're about to get it. The Castellet is on the edge of the water, and just out in the water you'll be able to see one of Hans Christian Andersen's most famous figures. You can just catch a glimpse of it through the crowd here. It's the Little Mermaid, from what's probably his most famous story. Well, thanks for watching. I had a blast in Copenhagen, and I hope you had a good time watching too, and I'll be out for more adventures soon enough. Bye for now.